Thanks everyone for joining. It's actually an honor for us to be introducing the updates of the EOSC portal. And let me give the floor to our project coordinator from EOSC Enhance, Carmela Azero.
So hello, thanks a lot for registering to this event. It's good and nice to have such participation and such interest into the activity of the EOSC Enhance and the EOSC Portal. We had just completed the first year of the EOSC Enhance project that started on the 1st December last year. So we managed to achieve this important step at the end of year one, that is the first release as foreseen and planned. And so today we are sharing with you some information, but I will start with introduction on the project and these year of activities that led to this step today. EOSC Enhance, let's put it in context, is one of the projects that is contributing to the construction of the European Open Science Cloud. And as you can see from this timeline, this span is between, so sorry, I was looking at the chat. There are messages on the chat. If there is any problem, just let me know about the audio particularly. So EOSC Enhance, as I said, started in December 2019 and will run for 2 years. It basically take over already existing version of the EOSC portal that was launched at the end of 2018. And that was initially developed with a collaborative effort by 3 projects, Infra Central, EOSC Hub, and Open Air Advance. EOSC Enhance has been the first project, let's say, funded with a focus on the development of the portal. And that's why we took this challenge also, and starting from the work already done and trying to harmonize the different components. Next slide. So here is the consortium of EOSC Enhance. There are 15 partners. As you can see, it's all partners who have been already involved and gained experience in the previous initial development of the European Science Cloud portal and key stakeholders of the EOSC initiative. As you can see, we have different categories of actors. We have technology providers, we have infrastructures, and also we have all the research infrastructure cluster projects represented in the consortium. So to have really, let's say, not large, but at least representative team that can provide the relevant input in these phases of development. Next slide. So EOSC Enhance has basically 4 objectives. That is, in fact, to enhance the service provider interface, to add new services and the resources in the European Open Science Cloud catalog, to accelerate the deployment and adoption of the EOSC service and the resources, to also foster and, let's say, increase the user demand and for the EOSC services, also making let's say, user-friendly interface so that the users can really feel at ease when accessing the portal, in spite of the complexities of and the wide range of services offered. We also want to enable an easier access to existing thematic cloud platforms and to these thematic data sets. So this, in short, is what EOSC Enhance is working on. Next slide. This is a little bit of project structure outline. So it's not a very complex and big project. It's just a €2 million project that is structured into 6 work package. So we have 1 and 6 that are project management and also the dealing with the European Commission and the relations with the executive board. So we all the stakeholders and also dealing with the ethics and privacy matters and the data management plan. Then we have work package 2, 3. Also, there is a mistake in one of this. Work package 3 that is led by University of Athens. Work package 2 by JMP, work package 4 Cyfronet, and work package 5 by Trust IT. So we have all these parts of the projects that dealt with specifically with the aspects of definition of specification, interoperability, the quality, and of all the specifications, and then developing the related functionalities, particularly for the service and resource providers. We have work package 4 that is more focused on the users' functionalities, and work package 5 that not only is tasked with the communication and dissemination activities, including the organization of this webinar, but also with curating the content component, so keeping the portal news session and the policy, the documentation, the training session up to date and populated with useful information and resources. Next slide. So going to the process that led to the release of this new version, this first release of a new version of the EOSC Portal. So we had different processes that, let's say, were interactive. So we started with different phases for the analysis of the functional and non-functional requirements. So an analysis, so an exploration of the integration models and techniques. So to bring all these resources in together and to expose them through the portal, to offer through the portal in an harmonized way. There was a development of the EOSC Portal profiles, so just to cataloging all these services, resources, objects that are included in the catalog of the portal. And we developed also a new onboarding process, let's say more detailed, but also somehow more automated than it was before. So trying to really make it smoother for the service and resource providers in EOSC, to onboard in EOSC. All these phases were fed by input that were gathered through the first requirements gathering campaign. So then it follows. So the requirements gathering campaign was conducted in spring/summer 2020. Then it was followed by a requirement gathering validation workshop that we held in September. So to analyze all the feedback and the input and contribution that we got through workshop with stakeholders, particularly with the other projects, and with an initial focus on the regional projects resulting from the Infra-EOSC 5B call, and with the cluster projects which are represented also in the consortium. Then we had in the last quarter of 2020 an analysis and adoption of new requirements, and all these elements fed into the process that led to the release 1 of the EOSC Portal under EOSC Enhance project. Next slide. So just to give a little bit of insight on how the requirements gathering campaign was conducted. So As I say, the goal was to guide the future enhancement to the EOSC portal that are embodied particularly in this first release, to gather insights on the needs of prospective EOSC users, and to have a better understanding on how to widen the user base of the EOSC portal. So the methodology used different tools like workshop, as I said, focus interviews, and also we interacted with stakeholders through the EOSC Secretariat Liaison platform, and through also the specific interest group set up by the EOSC Secretariat. We also published a survey on EOSC Portal Marketplace attended in September. So all the feedback and inputs we got from these channels, let's say, fed our knowledge for the requirement gathering campaign, and helped us into developing the different components of this first release. Next slide. So as I say, the target interlocutors were particularly end users on one side, so researcher or community managers, project coordinators of the EOSC contributing projects. We had an engagement activities toward different stakeholders in order to widen the user base. Training managers, because we have developed also catalog of trainings, and not only for the services, but also for horizontal, let's say, training that are now available through the specific section in the portal. And also communications manager that want to disseminate the outcome of their projects through the portal. We also have interacted a lot with service providers, so with aggregators, infrastructure, so public and private service provider who wants to, let's say, make their services accessible through the EOSC portal. So next slide. So, okay, so these are the plans for here too, but I think that I can just speak a little bit about those in the final session. So now so you can give a look, but we get into details later, and I leave the floor to my colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carmela. So now we can move on to a first overview of what happened in the EOSC portal content component, which is the EOSC-portal.eu website. So next slide, please. Thank you. So what happened here with the activities coordinated in work package 5 is that we have worked on on enhancing what happens in the main EOSC portal page. So as you know, EOSC portal is both a gateway to information about EOSC and information from the EOSC community, and an access point to both the provider dashboard and the catalog and marketplace. So the content, as you can see here in the slide, is curated by the EOSC portal editorial board, which comprises EOSC Enhance, our project, EOSC Hub, and OpenAir, as well as the EOSC governance through Secretariat. So next slide, please. Let's see what changed during this year. Next slide, please. So one of the first things we have changed was that we actually removed the expanded governance section from the EOSC portal website, and we redirected the content to the most updated place where people can find information, which is the EOSC Secretariat website. So people can now click in the footer on EOSC governance and then just move on and see all the latest updates, including all the latest documents from the EOSC governance. Next slide, please. We also made some improvements in the overall navigation for the main menu, as well as some content for lots of the pages, for example, the one on the EOSC projects. Next slide, please. And for example, here we have edited what was called EOSC in practice section. Now we have called it use cases, and we now have two separate sections, subsections, one for community use cases and one for industry use cases. You can find it here in the main menu as a new menu item, and people can now submit use cases more easily as well. Next slide, please. We have added a page about the EOSC Enhance project, which of course you can visit and to learn more about what the project is doing to enhance the activities of the EOSC portal, and you can find it on the EOSC portal website. Next slide, please. And then let's see what changed in terms of navigation. Next slide, please. So one of the main things was that thanks to the EOSC Enhance efforts, we have managed to align the content and to align the visual impact of the three components of the portal. As you can see on top, now the content component, which is the portal home, the catalog and marketplace, and the provider's dashboard all share the same header and now easier to find on the website. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Sorry. Yes, so let's move on to how to use it. So as Carmela was saying, we have conducted these requirements gathering activities, and the projects had shared with us their feedback and what they thought we needed to change. So one of the main things that came out from that was that projects and people and users needed to have easier access to materials that actually taught how to use the portal. So next slide, please. So as you can see, we have added in the main menu on the top right corner, there's the using the portal section now, which collects, next slide, please, sorry, which collects slides and video materials and all sorts of training materials related to the EOSC portal. You can find them there. They are searchable, and they can be filtered by type, and they're now much easier to find. So this is one of the main changes we've done in terms of navigation for the EOSC portal. Next slide, please. And then, so as you can see here, so these are all the filters that can be used. So if it's for users, for providers, if it's about EOSC in general, and so on. So these are the things that people can use for looking for training resources. Next slide, please. This is an example of one of the training resources. So for example, it might be a video, there will be a description as well, or it might be, next slide, please, or it might be, for example, a set of slides or a document which will be embedded in the page, and it's easier for people to navigate it. Next slide, please. And as you can see, there will be, so it will be much easier in general for users to learn about how to use the portal. So next slide, please. And the provider's documentation is the other, maybe it's the other core update in terms of content we have added to the portal. So this is also something that the projects were requesting to make it easier for them to understand how providers can apply, how providers can submit resources. So this is a new section you can also find under the providers menu item on the main page under providers documentation. This is something that also my colleagues will touch upon in later presentations. So next slide, please. And what's going to happen in the future? Next slide. So of course, as you know, the EOSC in general is a work in progress, and the EOSC portal reflects this. So of course, there will be other changes. We're already working on some other visual enhancements that will be implemented throughout the website. And of course, we will be interacting with the community to show the use cases and their contributions to the EOSC. So thanks everyone. Next slide, please. And I'll just leave the floor to my other colleague, Bartosz. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Federico. My name is Bartosz Wilk, and I'm working for Cyfronet at AGH in Kraków, and we are responsible for the functionalities towards end users in the EOSC portals, in the EOSC portal. And I'm going to present you with the highlights of this year's development for the functionalities towards the end users. Next slide, please. So we started the project with the new architecture of the EOSC portal, dividing it to 3 components, being content component, Federico just explained, user component being the catalog and marketplace, and the provider component dedicated for providers that George will showcase after me. Once we understood the structure of the new architecture, we adapted the 3 components to have the common header in all 3 respective components to allow users navigating between them, and in order to navigate to catalog and marketplace, we can now choose the menu, the item from the tab menu, or choose the respective category of services and resources in the menu. Next slide, please. The main enhancements of the catalog and marketplace in the EOSC Enhance project were based on the new requirements coming from the key stakeholders. So we introduced the functionality of comparison and streamlined finding resources through the new enhanced full text search that takes into account more metadata of the services and resources such as tagline, provider fields, or offer descriptions. These fields are highlighted on the list of the returned search results. Next slide, please. The comparison functionality allows the users to compare services to find the differences without digging into the details of each service or resource, and select the resource that is most valuable for the user and most suitable for the use cases. Next slide, please. Next part of the enhancements were targeted around the new resource layout, as Jorge and George will present later. In the scope of EOSC Enhance, we adapted the metadata structure of the resources to the new resource profile 3.0. So the data that is currently collected from providers are not now much richer than they used to be in the previous efforts. What we needed to do is to use this metadata in the presentation and try not to overload the end users with all the new fields, metadata, and values that are provided by the service provider. We wanted to make sure that although the new look looks familiar, still looks familiar for the end users, the new features and the new data are highlighted and can be noticed without any problems. The next slide, please. That's why we also developed a mini framework to guide an end user through the new features, and specifically new look of the resource layout is highlighted with the use of this framework. We called it tour guide, and by using it, I will present what changed. Next slide, please. So the main header section of the service and resource didn't change much. It still provides an information for main information such as name, tagline, or logotype, but we moved the main links to this section as we wanted to collect all the most valuable information in this fragment of the user interface. There is also one big button that helps to find a way to access the resource here. Next slide, please. On the right side of the resource presentation layout, we can find the main classification with iconography connected with categories, also with resource availability visualized on maps. So most crucial information coming from the resource classification that provider used is collected there. Next slide, please. About section didn't change much, so I'll skip this slide. This provides the previous slide provided information about the resource description and offers, and this didn't change much. Next slide, please. We introduced a specific tab that shows the full resource details in order to present the end user with the complete resource profile provided by service provider, and it is accessed through the main header. Next slide, please. And to give you an overview how it can look like if the provider provides us with all the information that they are asked for, this is a sample resource with all the resource metadata collected. So as you can see, this is pretty extensive and dependent on the quality of information that providers are willing to provide. Some of the fields are mandatory, some are not, so this look will vary from resource to resource. We wanted to make sure that all the categories of metadata are captured there, but the new look will keep the order of the information in order to make this information comparable between resources. Next slide, please. The mini framework for guiding a user through the new functionalities allows also to collect feedback. This is crucial for us as we can evaluate the user experience and engage the EOSC users in the process of polishing the web interface, as well as we can understand if the data collected from providers is enough for the users to determine if a service is usable or not. We can make sure that the quality of data collected there is appropriate. Next slide, please. What is maybe hard to be perceived by the end users, but will be perceived by the providers, is our effort to provide synchronization between two portal components, focus on service providers and the end users. Right now, as George will present, while the provider ends the onboarding process and updates the information about the resource, it is instantly visible in the catalog and marketplace, and the end users can access the newest available information without any delay. Next slide, please. Another feature introduced this year in the EOSC Portal user component is a user profile. The user profile is a functionality for authenticated users who use AAI to log in into the EOSC Portal content component, EOSC Portal user component, so the catalog and marketplace. The user is able to inform the platform about their interests and subscribe for notifications about new resources. And soon this information will be also used in order to provide even better user experience by profiling the search results and recommending services that are most probably interesting to the end user. And that's all for the enhancements of the user component. I believe that the questions will be answered at the end, so I'll pass the floor straight to George, who will present the provider component view.
Yes, thank you, Bartos. Hello, everybody. This is George. My name is George Papastefanatos. I work in EOSC Enhance for University of Athens. Our role in the development of the portal is on developing services towards the providers. So I will quickly provide an overview of these new features that were released last month and targeting the providers. Next slide, please. So let's see the main entry point of for the providers. You can see the URL. Also, you saw in the menu there is a separate section for the providers. What you can do at a glance in the new provider section. Next slide, please. First of all, what is available has to do with the onboarding. The onboarding now is a process, a self-service, let's say, process that is based on a workflow, on a well-defined workflow, where providers can actually register, onboard an organization and act this organization as a new provider, and also onboard resources. Resources capture actually services as well as other artifacts that the providers can onboard in the EOSC portal. Next slide, please. Then another feature that is available now has to do with the provider's dashboard. The provider's dashboard is a place where a user coming from a providing organization can view and manage and all the resources that are onboarded in the EOSC portal, change and perform other actions related to the resource portfolio. Next slide. And finally, the feature that has to do with the APIs. The APIs offer a programmatic way for providers to onboard, register resources, and of course manage resources in the catalog, as well as offers to third-party systems a programmatic way to get and retrieve the contents of the EOSC portal. Next slide, please. So I will proceed with an overview of these three features. First of all, the EOSC Portal onboarding process. Next slide. The onboarding process has a workflow mechanism. It follows steps for onboarding an organization as well as resources that will be provided by this organization. First, it allows users to onboard the provider, to fill in the information for a provider, for an organization, and also guide the users to fill in mandatory fields, also to submit this information, or to get and provide feedback to the onboarding team. And also there is the possibility to download this profile, this provider model, which is called provider profile, and reviewed offline in the form of PDF or Excel. Next slide. The onboarding of an organization is followed by a review by the onboarding team. The EOSC Portal onboarding team actually reviews and assess let's say, the accuracy or the validity of the information, and approves the next step, approves actually the onboarding of the provider. Also, there is a connection between this tool and a Jira workflow, which helps onboarding team to monitor the process of the onboarding. Next slide, please. Let's say the second step has to do with the registration, with the onboarding of resources. When a new provider is onboarded, a user from this provider can actually start register resources. This can be done either through the web interface, or through the APIs, through a programmatic way, especially when, let's say, the number of resources is quite large. So a user can use this functionality on board resources. And next slide, please. The last step, when the onboarding team reviews and approves resources, these are actually visible and published in the EOSC catalog and marketplace. This is what Bartosz showed before. Next slide, please. And next slide, yes. Thank you. So the dashboard actually offers the functionality to provide the users to manage the resources. It offers, let's say, a 360 view of the resources, offering statistics, user statistics for a single resource, about all resources coming from this provider, offering users to make public or inactive a resource in the catalog, or fill in a draft resource which is will not be visible in the catalog. Also, it offers the functionality to update the information in the provider or in the information in a resource, and of course add new resources. Next slide, please. So an overview about the portal APIs. As I said before, APIs offers the ability first to providers to register and manage programmatically all resources. First of all, there are methods that require authentication, and for that, a user who would like to use this API should first register and be through the AAI of the EOSC portal and use an API token to manage all resources. And next, the APIs actually group all the methods into methods that offer update capabilities or offer read capabilities to retrieve actually the resources and provider metadata. Next slide, please. The API documentation is available online. It is based on Swagger. Also, the APIs use SSL, a secure connection, and the use of the APIs is quite straightforward. The base URL is api.eoscportal.eu. This is followed by the method, which, as I said before, is available in the documentation. For instance, this method that retrieves all the resources available, all the public information of the resources available in the EOS portal. The returned information is in JSON format, and also it can be retrieved in XML format. And the model is based on the new EOSC resource and EOSC provider profiles, which also are available in the EOSC portal in the providers section. So this is an overview of the main features. I think there will be another webinar, especially for providers, so I will not go into much details. You are more than welcome to try yourself, and thank you very much.
Good afternoon to all. I'm Jorge Sanchez. I'm with JNP, and I'm coordinating in the framework of EOSC Enhance all the work that is related to specifications, tools, concepts, functionality, and architecture that we are currently implementing in the EOS portal. I understand that today we have in our participants people that are interested in general on the EOSC portal and the EOS developments, but I'm pretty sure that we have also people that are coming from EOS providers, or potentially they would like to become an EOS provider, or they are contributing and participating in aggregators like cluster projects, regional and national initiatives. And therefore, this presentation is of interest to you because it's significant for the EOS to work on interoperability, and therefore I will present some of the components that we have developed here, as well as the processes that we are running currently to further update the developments. I will go through some of the items that you can see here: definitions, functional and non-functional requirements, the profiles, the onboarding process, all the migration that we have implemented, and of course that will happen again in the future when we have new releases of the data models, the profiles, how we are performing onboarding operations currently, some tools like the monitoring portal tool that is also publicly available for you. And I will close with some links on tutorials, documentation, and future plans for 2021. Next slide, please. So in this, it is important that apart from the interoperability of machine-to-machine interaction, we need also to speak among us the same language. So we have provided a number of definitions for the community, so that we are all always in sync of what we're talking about. It's important to differentiate between the EOS portal, the EOSC in general, the EOSC registry, the EOS catalog, having a full understanding of that the portal is just one of the potential distribution channels of EOSC resources. The registry is the database that actually internally in the EOS portal maintains all the data related to the providers and resources that are exposed in the EOS catalog, that is the public view of those entities. It is also important to say that the language that we're currently using to mention the records in the catalog is the EOSC resources. EOSC resources can be either services, data sources, research products, and obviously others that will come and will be complementing the developments that we have to work on. Next slide, please. Similarly here, it is important to say that we have two main entities that are interacting in the EOS portal, the providers and the end users. And that for all this to happen, we need a strong interoperability framework, because this has to work among all our member states, among all the entities, institutions working to provide those resources to our research community. Profiles are now those data models, the actual metadata description of the resources, as well as the providers. We have, as already mentioned, 2 profiles specified. The onboarding process is the very exact definition of the steps that we are taking so that a provider can become an EOS provider, as well as the process that allows us to name a service, a resource, a data source, EOSC resource. And this is a very important aspect also for all of us, because since the potential EOSC onboarding will not be happening only on the EOS portal, but it will be certainly a distributed process, we all need to somehow also follow some common rules so that whatever comes into the EOSC is EOSC certified. And we follow, of course, the common rules of participation. And in order to interoperate, we can exchange data and metadata using the portal application programming interfaces, the APIs, because there is no other way that this will become fully scalable, having millions of users and millions of resources shared in the EOSC. Next slide, please. Similarly to that, it's important to have a picture of how we see the EOSC being developed. Again, I mentioned very emphatically that the EOS portal is only one of the potential distribution channels. All the other channels will be there and will be maintained, thematic clusters, regional clouds, any other type of aggregators, and going down to the actual providers of those resources, to the research communities. For this to work, we need at least the profiles, the common language to exchange the metadata between all those entities, and of course, APIs that exchange that information in an automatic way. Next slide. Second topic that I want to cover is that we have now a process to collect, to review, to adopt, and to put in a roadmap all the functional and non-functional requirements that are coming at least at the level of the EOS portal. Next slide, thank you. This process happens on a yearly basis. Obviously, we are reviewing all the requirements. They are either adopted or rejected. They are fully specified and they go into sprints of development. But the actual work is gathered on a yearly basis so that we have a roadmap. The roadmap for 2020 has been set up in early of the year, at the beginning of the project. We have collected a very large number of requirements from a dispersed number of sources, because we have the situation that many contributing projects, entities were working on that. So we collected everything. They're in a single point, and therefore the development teams now have a single point to work on the prioritized functionality that we need to implement. I'm in a very good position to say that whatever has been collected and specified and prioritized in the early 2020 have been almost implemented. Actually, I could say that more than 80% of the original functional specifications and non-functional specifications are in place today. It's important to say that we are collecting and we continuously collect requirements. I want to make also an additional call to today that we are receiving requirements still for the roadmap for 2021. We have already done a major assessment of requirements that came in the last month, but still this process is open. Whoever has any requirement on the EOS portal from any point of view, please don't hesitate to use our channels to put it and inject it into this process. The functional requirements will be presented in January for the 2021 development cycle to the Commission and to other stakeholders. Next slide, please. Then it's important to say that it's crucial that we all adopt a common language to interoperate and exchange the metadata of the resources providers and potentially in the future of other entities. We have developed and made public the profiles version 3.0 for the provider and resource. These are the two most significant entities at this moment of development of the EOSC. The specifications include a full specification of the types of all the attributes, length, whether those are optional or not. And obviously, you understand this is the basis for the APIs and the interoperability. Next slide, please. Then onboarding process. I already mentioned the significance of that. Is not significant only for the EOS portal, but is significant for anyone else contributing to the EOS to, if you wish, to actual providers, to aggregators at any level of operating under the EOS. The onboarding process currently has 10 steps that has to be followed in order to be sure that whatever is onboarded in the EOSC is actually following the rules of participation and many other aspects at an operational level that are required in order to make all this happen. Next slide, please. Then in 2020, we also did an extensive work to migrate, merge all the existing records available in various projects into a single registry. This process has been finalized in October, November. We have now a single registry for providers and resources. They follow the new version 3.0, and you understand that whenever there are new specifications of the profiles, obviously this process has to happen again. Attributes are added or deleted, becoming obsolete. Optional or mandatory attributes may also be the decision to move forward with the EOSC. So this migration led us to 122 providers that are EOSC providers and more than 280 records of resources that lead to actual individual resources or aggregating portals of many, many other resources. Next slide, please. Then on the operational level, also, we have defined a number of tools that are used apart from the workflows that already the providers component offer to the onboarding team. Also, a large number of other tools that facilitate maintaining a CRM infrastructure with the EOS providers and also facilitate the distributed operations of the onboarding team for the EOS. You see now that we have a very small number still of resources and providers, but this is expected to go very high. And therefore, all the automations and IT infrastructure for this part of the work is significant and crucial for the success of this endeavor. Next slide. Next slide, thank you. Then we also have developed a monitoring portal for the current status of the EOS portal. We made also through this login and password this available to all you in public. You can see some interesting things happening with regard to the onboarded providers and resources there. obviously, we have many other monitoring tools that are very useful for the actual operations of the onboarding, as well as to take strategic decisions on things that needs to happen in order to promote further the EOSC in general. Next slide. Now, for those of you that would like to understand better things that I have presented now, there are a number of tutorials that have been prepared. All of those tutorials are available as have been presented earlier at the EOSC portal, but each one of them will become also a dedicated webinar as has been planned and probably you are aware already of. Next slide. For the overall documentation, we have a number of significant results, deliverables of the project. Those two I consider most significant for those of you that are interested on this type of work, specification in order to adopt all these and all of us to become interoperable. Those documents are coming public soon. The individual components that constitutes parts of these components are already available in the provider's documentation section that you can already download and work with them. We will be providing further outputs of what I have been presented also in this section as well as in the tutorials. Next slide. And then let's see something about the future plans. This is also food for thought, but also a way to also request from you any feedback that you might have in your communities related to the EOSC and specifically to the EOSC portal that we'll be very happy to receive from you and try to put it in action in the roadmap. So first of all, we are currently doing the revalidation of all the EOSC providers and resources on the portal. This is an action that will mainly focus in December 2020. Maybe it will take a couple of months to complete it. So we need to go back with a new profiles with all the stakeholders and check that everything there is fully validated from all sides. We have restarted the onboarding process under the new framework, version 3.0, and this is continuing now. The onboarding team is fully operational, and therefore anyone that would like to onboard additional resources on the EOSC portal, this is a process that is now open. In 2021, in January, we're presenting the roadmap that has to be, first of all, approved by the PMB of EOSC Enhance, and of course, presented to the European Commission, and then this will be made public. We will be providing later on UML, RDF, XML of the profiles that could be very useful for some of you, especially also for the APIs and any other process to automate the exchange of this information. We will be extending the EOS resource profile that is currently and mainly focusing on services, not only, but mainly focusing there, to all other aspects, specifically to research products and data sources. Therefore, this component here will be actually the main input for the specification that will come later on for the EOSC resource. We are also implementing the EOSC quality assurance process that will actually help in maintaining the quality of the metadata in the EOSC portal, and this will start in April 2021. We expect to have the new version of the profiles in July 2021. So anyone that would like to contribute to this, please do so openly. This will be followed by the new onboarding process in case this is affected by the profiles. For example, we expect that depending on the resource type, there might be different processes that need to be implemented in order to validate, assess the different type of resources. Then we will need to migrate again the registry to version 4 in September. produce again all the new tutorials based on that, all the documentation, and at the end, again, do the revalidation of all this in December 2021, so that we deliver a fully validated EOSC registry, catalog, and portal to follow up initiatives. Thank you very much. I give the floor back to you, Federico.
So let's actually, okay, so we have this slide for Carmela to wrap up and give us some updates about the future steps before we close it.
Yes, so we are running a little bit late, but let's say in summary that in year two, we are going to continue and widening the requirement gathering activity that will address to the overall EOS community. And we will work together, also collaborate with the new InfraEOS project resulting from the subtopic, from the topic 03 and 07. So it should be EOS Future, namely, and EOS ACE, if I remember well. So because of course some of them will also affect the work in this project, will also affect the portal. We have a major release number 2, and it will include some bug fixing and the provisioning of analytics and visualization services, the integration of order management services for the provider, an update on the onboarding process. We are also working with the regional projects on, let's say, harmonizing also the feature of the onboarding process. Update, of course, of the APIs and extending also the EOS profiles. Of course, I mean, we have to adapt our projects also to the developments that happens in the context of the EOSC activities. So we interact also with the working groups and with other settings that probably will come next year after the, let's say, operational rollout of the EOSC association. So I don't know if there are some questions. Some have been answered. Federico, I don't know if we have some time.
There was one final question from Sarah Jones in the chat. I think that probably someone has already replied, though I think Jorge replied. So I don't know if Jorge wants to take, just to answer live to this one as well, just to close it. Thank you.
Yes, Sarah, certainly we need to incorporate as soon as possible all the results of the working groups in these processes that I presented. Therefore, I suggest that we activate a stronger interaction between those results and activities that are happening here in EOSC Enhance in collaboration with EOS Hub, and obviously coordinate with the EOSC Future that will start later on in the year. So I suggest that we hold a meeting to see how this could be strengthened and put in action.
Thanks, everyone. So I think we can wrap it up here. And thanks for joining this morning. And it was great to have you all online. We had more than 100 people online. So it means that the community is actually looking forward to knowing what's going on in the EOSC landscape. So test the new functionalities. Just go on the website and use the feedback forms that also Carmela has pasted in the chat. Let us know what you think, and we will incorporate feedback in the next release. So thanks again. Join the providers tutorial on the 17th of December, and we will see you online soon. Thanks again. Bye, everyone.